you. And my request is, if you have done the reading of the case study that I have sent two. One was for the last topic and one is for this topic. So we will touch upon the one that is for this topic on mergers and acquisitions. So that is merging incompatible organizational culture. So keep ready, either in the print form or whatever way you prefer, so that when we come to that, we can discuss. Okay, so today is session 5. So we are looking at topic 5. Now, one minor change, as per your curriculum, I have put it here, but what you need to understand is that when we look at mergers and acquisitions, which we will just do, though the heading of this topic in your curriculum is structural interventions, but kindly appreciate there cannot be a structural intervention without process intervention, and without process intervention, and the opposite is also true. You cannot have process interventions without structural interventions. The degree, the percentage may vary, but both have to be there simultaneously. This is one thing you should never lose track of, because if you go back to the first session, I have very clearly said that, and I have also given you slides in which it is very clear that both of these go hand in hand. So for our quick recall, structural intervention are those interventions where it may involve organizational structure, it may involve technology. So basically, and it may involve locational changes, regional structures, all of that, but it directly does not talk about behavioral changes. But to bring about those structural interventions, for example, when you introduce a new technology into your work process, even the simplest of things, for instance, earlier we used to write physical letters and now you write emails. So this is basically a structural intervention, but you cannot implement this structural intervention unless behavior of people is also kept in mind, right? So we need to realize that, yes, it is primarily a structural intervention. Process intervention is needed. It may be primarily a process intervention. Behavioral changes are the key thing. But along with that, some structural intervention will also be needed. So they go hand in hand. So this particular topic 5 or session 5, is devoted to OD interventions during mergers and acquisitions. So first we will quickly understand what is the meaning of a merger and acquisition, right? So now you see, kindly go through this. There's no point in my read out. So basically the essence slide is that when you do some mergers and acquisitions, M&A for short, it includes within it, and we will look at that classification a little later, it could be lots of things, right? And I will explain the two key, that is merger and acquisitions, just after this. So as you can see, it can have financial transactions, mergers, acquisitions, consolidations, tender offers to buy up something, purchase of assets, management acquisitions, just the management changes, everything remains same. So those are the kind of variations that it could take. Even the big management consultants have a desk or a department, so to say, which is called the M&A department, which consists on certain such activities when organizations are being acquired or merged. Okay. So the first sentence is the key. So merger for merger, agreement that unites two existing companies into one new company, right? That is merger. Whereas in contrast, acquisition is when one company purchases most or all of one's shares. So it has acquired the other company. Why has it acquired? To gain control over that company. So if they purchase 50% of a target firm stocks, that is shares, and other assets, allows the acquirer to make decisions about the newly acquired assets without the approval of the company's existing shareholders. That means A has acquired a company B by buying up shares. So B had its original set of shareholders, but now because A has taken or bought more than 50%, they are in a position to make all decisions as compared to the old shareholders, because they have now bought more than 50%. So why are these done? Kindly go through. Basic reason why mergers and acquisitions happen. So these are done to expand a company's reach. That means there could be situations where a company, whatever the product, let us say cars, they are very popular in the northern part of the country, and there is another car company which is very prominent, good market share in the southern part of the company. They may decide to merge. So the company's reach becomes more. Expand into new segments. As we will see a little later, a car manufacturing company may acquire or may merge within itself a parts making company, right? Just to give you an example, I'm not saying this is happening. Imagine Maruti is making cars, and in Gurgaon, they have many joint ventures, or for example, Bharat Seats provides the seats, Jai Bharat Maruti Limited gives the sheet metal, the body and all. Precall and primarily they produce the gauges of the cars. So any of these companies can be taken into the bigger Maruti fold by acquiring. And if they are of merger, normally is considered to be an roughly equal companies, and then typically they change the name of the company also, so that none of them have the upper edge, right? We'll come to those details a little later. So mergers and acquisitions are commonly done to expand a company's reach, expand into new segments. Okay, maybe there is a car manufacturing, as I told you, they are into the higher end cars, and another company is into a lower end cars. So they merge to give the customer from the same showroom a variety of options. So a smaller car and a very large limousine, everything is available in one showroom. That could also be the rise. So it is expanding into new segments or gain market share. As I told you, north south, if they combine, they will have a much bigger might. They will advertise commonly and all that. So those things will happen. So all of these are done to increase. In the good old days, only the shareholders mattered because the shareholders are the owners of the company. They have put in the money to run the company to begin with. But nowadays, we talk in terms of the stakeholders because it has been very well established that unless you carry all the stakeholders with you, for example, a customer is not, may or may not be the shareholder of a company. But can you say that customer doesn't matter? A vendor who provides you either absolute raw material or maybe some kind of a semi-finished raw material. I just mentioned Bharat Seats provides the seats. Now, without seats, can you make a car? So they are also important. So stakeholder is anybody who stands to gain or lose from the company. So all of them are important. Shareholder, obviously, because his money will go down the drain if the company ends up making loss. We move on. You can see in the first para, lot of people use them interchangeably. Right? So mergers and acquisitions, people don't differentiate. Okay. So they are used interchangeably. But in real terms, in the second para, it explains when one company takes over another entity and establishes itself as the new owner, the purchase is called an acquisition. So when an acquisition happens, from a legal point of view, the target company ceases to exist. You will not find shares of the company that has been acquired now. The buyer absorbs the business. Buyer stock continues to be traded while the target company's stocks ceases to trade because that share stops being there. Okay. So we need to understand this very, very clearly that acquisition means one of the companies remains, the other company is completely absorbed and loses its identity completely. That is acquisition, right? On the other hand, when merger happens, kindly go through, then I'll explain. So now acquisition, and here we are trying to understand merger. So a new single entity is formed. Two almost equal entities, that is why it is mostly happening between equals, who join forces to move forward as a single new entity rather than remain separately owned and operated. This action is known as a merger of equals. Both company stocks are surrendered and new company stock is issued in its place. Classic example, two major car companies, Daimler, Benz and Chrysler, ceased to exist when the two firms merged and a new company, Daimler Chrysler, was created. Okay. So, whereas acquisition would be, for instance, there used to be a company called Reliance Petroleum that was acquired into Reliance, and Reliance Petroleum shares, like I was having both Reliance as well as Reliance Petroleum. So Reliance Petroleum shares were converted into Reliance shares and given to us. So that is acquisition. Here, merger means if I have Daimler Benz shares and I have Chrysler shares, both of them become invalid and I am issued shares of the new company against them, which is Daimler Chrysler. I hope I have been able to explain the difference between mergers and acquisitions. right? Now, as we go into a little more depth of mergers and acquisitions, please remember our focus is not mergers and acquisitions. Our focus is OD. Now, so start thinking when these kind of mix-ups happen, two different companies, two different cultures, two different set of people, they are made into one. It is exactly like, imagine for a moment, there is a 4-member family and there's another 4-member family. If they are merged into one family, confusion will occur or no? So there will be issues of structural nature, which means who will be the head of the family, how will be the structure, etc., etc. And also some behavioral changes have to be brought in. So OD and change management becomes an absolute necessity to carry out this transition into the new structure, new behaviors, right? So this is why OD and change management becomes very crucial in cases of mergers and acquisitions. So kindly go through, then briefly we'll take on what are the key takeaways. And for each of these steps, we have to think what we need to do in our OD and change management processes. Okay, so the first 3 points are pretty simple. We have already dealt with. We need to focus on 4th and 5th, and they have a lot of relevance for our OD and change process. First 3 are conceptual points. 4th and 5th are operational points, right? So, M&A deals generate sizable profits for the investment banking industry. They charge a huge fee for helping companies to acquire or to merge. And there are many steps that have to be done, including a study of whether the organizational cultures of the two firms will be compatible. What changes would be needed? We will see some examples of how companies completely failed to manage the merger or the acquisition. The case study that I sent you, merging incompatible organizational cultures, is a clear reflection of that. But the consultants, that is typically the big companies, consulting companies, they handle these kind of assignments like the KPMGs and the PricewaterhouseCoopers and Deloitte and such other big names, Boston Consulting Group. Now, the 5th point has to be kept in mind that the result of mergers are success in some companies, but the result of mergers and acquisitions could also be failures. So we will see that a little later. Okay. So an OD consultant has to be ready to handle the kind of issues that will be thrown up before the merger, during the merger, and after the merger. So this 5th point is about post-merger, which means after the merger has happened. So what could be the structures when mergers happen? Kindly go through this, and there are some more on the next slide. We'll come to that. So as you can see, in point number 1, when we are calling it horizontal mergers, we just talked about Daimler, Benz, and Chrysler. These are two companies, big ones. Direct competition was there. Same product lines. Both were car manufacturers. So they came together and created Daimler Chrysler. Okay. So that is an example of horizontal merger. Another name that comes to my example that comes to my mind is ExxonMobil. Both were huge petroleum companies and they merged. Exxon was separate, Mobil was separate, but they formed ExxonMobil Limited or Inc., whatever there. We have limited here and US companies are typically INC. So horizontal merger is like that. Vertical merger is when a customer and a company or a supplier and a company, they merge. Example given here is, imagine a cone supplier. We all have ice creams. So there is ice cream, cones are manufactured by some company. Ice cream is manufactured by some company. These two can merge. Normally, of course, the ice cream company will be bigger. The cone supplier will be smaller, but it could be the other way around also, because the same cone supplier could be providing cones for different brands of ice cream, right? For example, many of the consulting companies are much bigger in size than the companies that they consult for, right? So it is possible. So customer and company or supplier and company, they merge. Okay. So we need to look at that as a vertical merger. Technically, it is called a vertical merger. Then we have 4 more types. Congeneric mergers, where the two companies are serving the same consumer base in independent ways. As you can see, a TV manufacturer and a cable company in the earlier example, or a DTH company. Okay. A Tata Sky may decide to merge with Samsung Television. Possible. Okay. So here what is happening, both were, in the previous one, the cone supplier was supplying to the ice cream manufacturer. Here, the two companies are supplying to the same customer, but in independent of each other. Okay. So you buy a TV, new house, and then tell Tata Sky and they will come and give you that set-top box and whatever. So these two companies may merge. You have a 4th category, market extension merger. Two companies that sell the same products in different markets. I gave you the example of company A may be strong in the north, company B may be strong in the south, or two parallel companies in 2 different countries. Okay, one in Bangladesh or Sri Lanka or somewhere, and one in India. They could think of merging. So that is to extend the market and create synergies. We'll learn the synergy part of it as we go. Then 5th category is product extension merger. Two companies selling different but related products in the same market. Right? If you have, for instance, ready-made garments company and cloth, okay, so, or tailoring, so related products, but they are operating in the same market, they could think of merging and providing the customer from one particular showroom all that the customer needs. And next is conglomeration. two companies that have no common business areas. Okay. But they come together, right? For some kind of benefits in the future. There is no common business, but the bigger the expanded big groups, you will find such things happening. In the Tata Group, for instance, they have TCS on the one hand, and they have Tata Motors, and they have Tata Steel, right? So there is no common business as such. Steel and car, will be some link is there, but TCS and Tata Steel or Tata Motors have no connection. So they could also come together and operate as different divisions. Okay. You have an HUL, for instance. They have soaps and they have personal care products and they have detergents and they have tea and oil. So, and they have ice cream. So when HUL acquired the ice cream business, quality ice cream, it was an unrelated business for them. But they had the management expertise to run different varieties of companies, and so they did it. So we need to have this kind of understanding. Now, why this is little important, I am not saying you have to memorize all of these, but if you remember these varieties broadly, you will understand that in OD and CM, what we need to do in these kind of situations. If a TCS and a Tata Steel merge tomorrow for consolidation, now people will be coming from completely different mindsets. An IT engineer and a production engineer on the shop floor of Tata Steel or Tata Motors, both may have engineering degrees, but the two are completely different as far as their work exposure goes. So we need to see what kind of issues that will throw on. Okay. Now, moving on, we go to so as we have already understood, organizations are merging with or acquiring other firms. Very simple. Now here, why HR is mentioned? Because at the end of the day, the maximum issues that are thrown up are in the human resource domain. Because let's talk technology, because that is a structural change. You will say, what is the human resource involvement here? Now tell me, who decides which technology to be bought? How that technology has to be used? Who has to be trained? Technology cannot work on its own, right? So any structural intervention you have to do, HR issues will always throw up. And then of course, the key HR issues of organizational cultures, which is what has been dealt with in the case study, if you have gone through, right? So if HR, and when the OD and CM people come into your organization to do a large OD and CM exercise, typically the key partners of theirs within the organization are the HR people. The HR people are familiar with the people issues of the organization, and the new acquired company or the merged company, their HR people are familiar with what their HR issues were, and therefore the OD and CM people will find it very beneficial to have detailed interactions with them. Even in the meetings with the other departments, marketing or finance or production or materials management, HR people and the OD consultants will all be together. And that is where HR has a strategic role to play. HR professionals will participate in the discussions prior to top management making final decision. That means even before a merging has happened, even before an acquisition has happened, the HR people will be in the picture. That is the idea. because they know the inside story. Now, this is a class example. This firm had 1,000 employees and they were looking for some kind of proposed mergers or acquisitions. Now you see the vice president of human resources spends 1 week in any firm that is proposed for merger or acquisition to determine whether the corporate cultures of the two entities are compatible. So even before the outside consultants come in, sometimes they will also come in, and the inside HR people, they will form a team to analyze the corporate cultures of the two entities. But there are situations where if you have competent HR people, then they themselves can make an analysis whether this kind of merger or acquisition will make sense or not. So two potential acquisitions that were viable financially were not made for this company because the organizations would not mesh well, and that some talented employees in both organizations probably would quit. Now, this is a very, very important issue for HR. Whenever there is uncertainty, do you need your best people to help you, or will you permit them to go away? Uncertainties like we are facing today, if at all somebody gets a job, obviously they will be the brighter people. So on the one hand, you are getting into an uncertain situation by the merging or through the acquisition, and on the other hand, you are likely to lose a lot of your good people. So it will be a problem. So, but then unfortunately, in most industries, this level of involvement of HR is not there, either because HR is not competent or because the top management does not realize how important these things are. And this is one of the key reasons why lots of mergers and acquisitions are complete failures in terms of what they wanted to achieve. So this, of course, is part of the strategic planning process. So the two organizations that are planning to merge, or one is planning to acquire the other, both have their own strategic planning processes. And now a new strategic planning process for the bigger organization, which will be formed after the merger or after the acquisition, has to be done. So as you can see in the second para, the implication of this concept is that changes in the organization structure would be needed. How work is to be divided into jobs, and because jobs are the vehicles through which the organization drives towards the strategic plans. Now let me give you an example. A and B are merging. Now A will have an office in Delhi. All metros, typically large organizations, will have their offices. Similarly, B will also have an office in Delhi. So A has a regional manager north in Delhi. B also has a regional manager north in Delhi. So what will the new structure be? Who is more senior? Who is more competent? Who will be the boss? Or there will be some other arrangement. One regional manager will be sent to some other region or given some other role. So those are the kind of things that will come in. So now you see what I said in the beginning. Basically, if you look at mergers and acquisitions superficially, you will see only structural changes that are needed. But in order to ensure that those structural changes work, for example, this combining two regional offices into one regional office is a structural change. Right? Those of you who have gone through the study case study would see how they merged their billing operations and that created a problem, right? So those are the kind of things that have to be thought. In that case, Homedco and Abbey Healthcare, the two had different cultures. One was centralized, one was decentralized. So people found it very difficult to work together. And it went so bad that A set people will call B set people as idiots, and B set people will call A set people as idiots. Now, if you have colleagues who are calling each other idiots, what kind of teamwork are you expecting? So this is where HR and OD consultants have to work out the strategies as to what may happen and accordingly what needs to be done, how it has to be planned, how people have to be trained and messaging given, how they will be benefited from this merger or acquisition. So the last sentence says, it becomes obvious from this that a serious OD and CM intervention will be needed. So what are the advantages that we have in our resources? What are the internal strengths and weaknesses of the human? That has to be calculated for the merger and acquisition to work properly. And obviously, when you are planning to create a new marketing team for the new entity, now you, HR, can't sit in its own ivory tower and create a plan. They have to deeply discuss with the operating executives and managers to revise the organization, restructure the organization and all its components. Components would be departments, locations, regions, all of that. So HR managers should function in this way, much as architects do when redesigning existing buildings. You are familiar that many of our old forts have now been converted into heritage hotels and they are doing brisk business, right? So that is the kind of architectural change within the organization that people have to undergo. And that is where again, OD consultants and HR people play a role in this strategic new entity. Now, you see, studies reveal, and this is a very interesting bit, that most of the M&As that happen, 75% cases, they fail to achieve the financial or strategic goals. Now, it's a very clear thing. That means how serious the problem is, that you just can't go and merge and acquire without taking care of all these things. 75% possibility of failure. But why are they even then used? Leaders regularly use them to achieve desired organizational growth and change. When two companies are not doing well, but you are finding it difficult to throw out people, then you may like to go into a merger and acquisition knowing fully well that maybe the financial profits that you are thinking you will be able to make, the rate at which you want to increase your market share may not be met. But even then, this restructuring opportunity comes only when you combine the two organizations, right? We have briefly touched upon John Cotter's model, 8-step model, and there is a full session devoted for it. We will see that when we come to that. Now, he has given a very interesting point that unless you create a sense of panic, people do not change so easily. somebody who has been a smoker for 30 years, it's very, very difficult. Howsoever much you do counseling or whatever, they find it almost impossible to give up. But when there is a serious health issue and the doctor tells the patient that either you give up smoking or you give up your life, a sense of panic comes in, and that is when they change. So, as you can see from here, even though 75% of the times studies reveal that they are not able to achieve their financial or strategic goals, but still it becomes an opportunity to reassess the business from a completely new perspective. And what better than today's example? If in January or February you have to sit at home for 6 months or something like that, we would not have believed our answer. But all of us have done fairly well. In early March, India was manufacturing 0 PPEs, right? Today, we are manufacturing 4 lakh PPEs a day within a space of 3 months. If this pandemic had not, I'm not trying to say that it is a good thing that has happened, please don't misunderstand. But I'm saying that this emergency situation created by us, a sense of panic, which has forced us to adapt to newer ways of doing things. In February or March, early March, for instance, what we are doing right now was unthinkable. We would have met in training house every Sunday or whatever, and we would interact there, right? And we would have tea together and we would have lunch together and whatnot. So this kind of interaction where we don't meet anybody was unthinkable. But within 2 months, it's all done. This is the new way. And this may continue for a while, at least for a while, and who knows. So this is where you have to understand that may not be that all the objectives of a M&A is achieved. And in fact, 75% of it is not achieved, but still people go in for it because leaders look at it, business leaders use it regularly to achieve desired organizational growth and, most importantly, change. People do not change unless there is a sense of panic put into them. Right? So the manner in which most M&As are conceived runs counter to the rules of, this is the key, counter to the rules of effective leadership and change management. Why? Because which leader would rush in to a situation where they know that there is a 75% probability of failure? How many such risk takers would there be in normal circumstances? Not many. But typically, M&As create that kind of, what should I say, turbulence. And they are characterized typically, as you can see, by inadequate vision, inadequate communication, inadequate resources, and inadequate teamwork. But we still do it. So the stated benefits may not be achieved, but there are other benefits that are getting achieved. Okay. Professionals are best suited to provide the strategic insights and the bottom line savings through the M&A process. Now, please understand, and in the early class, first class, I think I did make a mention that why external OD specialists are preferred when it is obvious that the inside senior people know much more about the organization and its pluses and minuses. The reason is that the outsider looks at it from a very objective perspective he or she or the team has only two objectives. One objective is to get their professional fee, and second objective is that they should do such a good job that message spreads to other organizations and they can get more and more assignments. Whereas an internal person, even though they are aware of, and of course the OD consultant bring with them the expertise of their handling such situations multiple times in multiple organizations. It's exactly like the doctor. A complete stranger doctor we go to maybe sometimes when need be, whereas who can know our bodies better than we do? Who can know exactly the kind of headache I am having or a stomach ache I'm having? But a complete stranger, we go and tell the problem and they find the solution for us because they have handled these situations with maybe 3,000 or 10,000 or 20,000 patients. Exactly the same way, the OD people, professionals who are not part of the organization, have their expertise areas over a period of time. And therefore, they are better suited. Plus, no politics, no, further interest of, selfish interest or any such thing. Okay, so they can contribute at all the stage, in all the stages. Pre-merger research. Pre-merger research is each time a company may not have identified very clearly that this is the company I want to merge with, or this is the company I want to acquire. They have certain characteristics in their mind that we want to acquire a company which has 1, 2, 3, 4. So there has to be some pre-merger research that has to happen. Okay, it's exactly like when you are planning to buy a new house, you go to a property dealer, but you don't have any specific house in mind that this house number, this in this colony is what I want to take. There may be, but you have a general concept that these 3, 4 things I want and a budget for that. So that needs some kind of pre-merger research, which the property dealer has done or will do for you. Similarly, the OD consultants will do pre-merger research. Then comes due diligence. Due diligence is when you have spotted that, okay, this is the company I want to acquire. Then the more and more details of that company you have to understand, whether it is a sensible merger or not. So you find more and more about that company. Discovery and courtship. That means now the negotiations have started for at what price will it be bought? How will the payments be made? What kind of rights they will give up? How much of the shares? For example, if in my company somebody wants to acquire, I may still want to keep a minority share so that I get my dividends and I still remain a part of the company. So they may say, no, minimum 51% we will want. So I may retain 49% at my end. So those kind of nitty-gritties, discovery and courtship is that phase. Then the planning and strategy formulation, how to go about doing it, right? The nuts and bolts. The restructuring that would be needed, those have to be thought of. And how will it be communicated to the employees, right? Some of the big brands that you know today of HUL were separate companies. Lipton was a separate company, Brook Bond was a separate company. Gradually, all that was merged into one entity, right? So, we need to understand this. And finally, the post-merger integration, two entities becoming one. So there would be teething problems which have to be sorted out. So at all these stages, the OD consultants have to operate along with the company's senior management team and sometimes even with junior employees. Now, specifically, so the role of an OD role in making mergers and acquisitions work. So what they do is they have worked with the executives to put combinations on the path towards strategic and financial success. That is the ultimate objective. Generic OD practices, which we have discussed earlier, collection of data, action research as a technique, feedback, engaging clients in using the findings to develop insights and plan the interventions, what exactly we need to do. They all apply here. In addition, OD interventions have been developed at the individual level, group level, and organizational levels, specifically for M&A situations. For example, when you merge the two regional offices of the two companies, then down the line also, you will have to create effective teams. So a lot of team building, team working, and team leading workshops have to be conducted so that they become integrated as one team. It's exactly like, for example, when the Indian team has to play a series with another country, the players come from different states, right? So the coordination that is needed may not be there. That is why typically you will find there are conditioning camps that are held, right? And a lot of players are called in at one place. They practice regularly together. For example, the two openers may be from two different states, right? In ODIs, for instance, we open with Rohit Sharma from Mumbai and Shikhar Dhawan from Delhi. So they do not play as openers for Mumbai or for Delhi. So the coordination, so they have practice being partners to each other, right? So those are the kind of things I'm talking of. So OD interventions have to happen at the individual. There may be some difficult individuals in every organization, and you are all experienced people. You will certainly find some people who are extremely talented, but they find it difficult to work in groups. Those individuals have to be also counseled, mentored, coached, whatever. Then, of course, the group and the organizational levels, specifically for M&A situations. In fact, we have a technique called LSIE, large scale interactive sessions, where we call all the employees of an organization if possible. It is possible for up to 600, 1000 people at one place. And then we have exercises to create that synergy in them, right? Otherwise, you will do it at regional levels and then consolidate the experiences, etc., etc. So while an exhaustive listing of OD interventions, no one can make it out because every single merger, every single acquisition has to be studied in depth. And out of the whole lot of OD interventions that we have with us, we have to select which one will be most appropriate. Okay. So we can provide a sample of the ways in which OD activities have enhanced M&A. Okay. So M&As typically are fast-paced change efforts. As I said a little while earlier, on its own, a running company finds it difficult to change. Whereas M&A brings that kind of turbulence and fast-paced change efforts are possible. which create excitement, but at the same time, it creates anxiety. For example, definitely the two regional managers in the north would be thinking, मेरी नौकरी जाएगी या उसकी जाएगी, कौन बचेगा, right? So anxiety also will happen. क्या होगा इसके बाद? Not to mention for the OD and HR professionals supporting them. तो आपको excitement को भी support करना है, because excitement नहीं होगी तो you won't be able to move as per your plan. Anxiety को आपको overcome करना है, उनको मतलब employees have to overcome their anxiety and you have to help them out with that. Give them assurance, particularly the talented people, to assure that no one is going to lose his job, no one is going to lose his salary, etc., etc. So that they stick on, because you will need the good people to take your company forward as per plans. The lack of robust change plan can leave companies vulnerable to loss of talent. This is what I was telling you. Cultural clashes, which is very, very clear in the case study, which we'll come to just in a minute, and ineffective integration planning and implementation. So, the good news, of course, is that it does not have to be this way if handled thoughtfully and carefully. Now, unfortunately, these days I do not find management education stressing enough on what is called the critical thinking processes. We were always groomed and trained by our professors and later on our bosses that critical thinking is very important. Think of the end objective you want to achieve and then work back. And that is when your steps will become clear, right? If I do not know that I am in Delhi, I do not know that I want to go to Chandigarh, I may be having 5 limousines with 5 drivers, I may have a helicopter, I may have a plane waiting at the airport, but unless a basic decision that where do I want to go, what is my objective? My objective is to go to Chandigarh or to Jaipur. No amount of resources will ever help you without that. So also a part of critical thinking is, for every step that I take, have I thought a couple of steps in advance as to what could be the outcome of my taking this step? Now, those of you who play chess would know that typically the rules of chess are known to everybody. A 5-year-old kid also knows the rules of the game. So how is it decided as to who is the better player? So we need to have the board control, and if I can think of what are the possible 7, 8, 10 steps that I can take, my opponent will be stronger if he can think of 20 or 30 steps that he can take against me. And he will be weaker than me if I was able to think of 10 steps, whereas he can think only of 3 or 4. That is how your strength is determined. So it's not about knowing the rules. Please understand, a cricket umpire or a football referee knows the rules probably much better than the players, but why can't they play? So we need to realize this aspect. Just knowing the rules will not help. We have to have the critical thinking ability, or which is also called the thinking through process. मैं अगर A करूंगा तो उसका क्या क्या नतीजा होगा, उसके आगे फिर क्या होगा, फिर क्या होगा. So that kind of a, and as you go more and more distant, for example, कल आपको क्या करना है, you should be sure, but एक साल बाद क्या करना है, you will not be so sure. But some kind of an ideation has to be there. And then, of course, mid-course corrections would always be there. So your objective and how to achieve those objectives, that path is to be handled, the last sentence, thoughtfully and carefully. Randomly नहीं हो जाता. जो सक्सेस स्टोरी आपको दिखता है किसी भी फील्ड का, don't think that this person is very bright and everything succeeds, whatever. Now let me give you an example. Gulzar Saab, as you all know, is such a fantastic writer. Okay, so he was once asked by an anchor that Gulzar Saab, आप तो कमाल के हैं, जो कुछ भी आप लिख देते हैं वो एकदम हिट हो जाता है. So what was his reply? He says, no, not at all. मैं तो मजदूर आदमी हूं, मेरा रूटीन बना हुआ है, मैं रोज सुबह 10 बजे राइटिंग डेस्क पे बैठ जाता हूं और शाम के 5 बजे तक मैं लिखता हूं. Now try to analyze this situation. 7 hours of writing, if a person of the capability of Gulzar Saab does, so he would at least write 10 pages in a day. That means at the end of the year, he would be having a huge volume with 3,650 pages. Does he create that much of hit sentences or hit scripts every year? Out of that 3,650 pages, some sentence, one share, one dialogue will take him to the heights. But that would not have been created if he would not have put in the hard work. So it is a step-by-step process. A lot of people do not realize, and unfortunately I find even in management education today, the professors are not giving adequate attention to this aspect in the future managers that they are grooming. We need to have this thoughtfully and carefully. So this is about broadly the picture I wanted to give you on mergers and acquisitions. Now let's quickly come on to the case. And may I request the host to allow the people to talk, because I would like to see if it is possible for one of the students or one of the participants, I should say, who can give a summary of the case, because that way interactions will be much better. Is it possible? Hello? May I have the participants unmuted, please? Or should I do it?
I think you have the rights to do it. So,
Hello?
yeah, you should be able to do it. Participants should be
Okay.
able to do it themselves.
Okay, fair enough. So I'm requesting the participants, please unmute, and it'll be nice if we could have a little discussion on the case study that I sent, because the broad themes I have covered in summary, and the case has all these aspects. And if you have not gone through the case, then please tell me. There's no point in. Anybody? Any volunteer who can highlight the key points in the case?
Hi, this is Andrilla.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to volunteer. So, sir, just to mention about the case study about the organizational development and change management, I have gone through this case study. But
Excellent.
I have just gone through, but unfortunately, I have not read the entire case study which you have just sent across in respect to organizational culture. So
Okay,
I
this
can
one you have
describe
not done. So
organizational. Yeah.
are you suggesting we do the first case then, which
Yes.
was pending from the
Yeah.
previous talk?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Oh, fine. Let me find it. Yeah, but you start. I vaguely remember that. I'll just take it on my own this thing in front of me. I'll locate that. Not a problem. You start off.
Yeah. So
That was the insurance case, right?
yes, it was about Swastik Insurance Company Limited.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So, as per the case study, it was the summary was like, Swastik Insurance Company was it has grown up from a small-sized organization to gradually to developing organization, which which is leading to increase in employees and a change from unstructured and informal organization to a structured part.
Excellent.
And for that thing, for the structure, for the organizational structure to make up and for everything to go in place, they needed more competencies and more more division of or as a division of assignments which was required in that case.
Right.
Because that point of time, in the case, it says that people, employees working over there, they get haphazard what kind of work they are supposed to do, because there are more repeated works which have been seen over there.
Right.
And apart from that also, employees over there are also a little they're unsure about the thing, because the competencies which was required as per the role and responsibility was not up to the mark. So
Right.
in that per se, Mr. Singh started getting information that all is not well in his company, and that working relationships among the employees have deteriorated in recent times. And he found out that there are a couple of problems which next 3 months, and reported like some work was being done twice and some tasks were not being performed. Some employees felt that they were doing more, and when the associated lawyers sought answers to queries, employees did not know as to who other than Mr. Singh had the authority.
इसको बंद करके देखता हूँ.
So the questions, it was more or
Excellent.
less, yeah, more or less, which I have seen this case is because it's an entirely change management scenario. So what all things should come for an organizational change, and what all parameters should be taken care of, how the planning can be done, and how through phases it can be done. So
Right.
all these things are needed here. So the first question says that what change management issues are highlighted in the given situation. So as per
Right.
my opinion, or as per my thinking, it's like unstructured organization, hierarchy is not defined, horizontally. Division of labor is weak, job functions are not defined well, repetition of task, time wastage,
Right.
communication flow weak communication flow, no formal job
Right.
task assignment, KRAs, KPIs are not defined, unequal
Right.
distribution of work, lack of team building interventions, capacity increase. So capacity increase is basically the headcount increase, the employee increase. So yeah, and
Right.
the question number
If it's felt that the job load is more, if it is felt that the job load is more, but
yeah.
one thing we have to keep in mind that it is mentioned that because there are no boundaries, because there is no job description, a lot of people end up repeating. You know, so
Yes.
there may or there may not be a need to increase manpower. That has to be assessed. Otherwise,
Right.
you are absolutely right. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so this is as per my opinion for the first question. The second question says, do you see the possibility of a successful organizational development intervention? Why or why not? So I see there
Right.
has to be an OD intervention is very much needed. The reason is, first is planning
Mm,
is required, structuring is required, processes needs to be defined, process owners needs to be highlighted, function level
right.
and vertical wise decision makers needs to be identified, communication pattern and modes needs to be identified team wise, change in work culture. So work culture is much more that there should be a change in thinking about the work culture. How I
Excellent.
will say, because initially the organization was very small, it was not that bigger, while in smaller organization or a startup, maybe things become very uncomplicated. They are very simple, like kisi ko bol diya and the job is getting done. So
Right.
but after a while, when you expand your business, when you increase the organizational things, so you need to get enough number of employees over there as per the capacity, and accordingly you need to identify like which kaun sa banda kya kaam karega. So that's the thing. And that ways, in smaller organization, it becomes a little difficult, it becomes very easy for people to communicate. But in
Right.
larger organization, communication flow has to come in a very strategical manner, rather than hodgepodge, doing hodgepodge, getting to know from that boss, getting to know from, I should report to my boss, or who is my boss? I have no idea who is my boss. Everybody is a boss. So such kind of scenarios have been changing. So work culture needs to be defined over there, and then competency skill gap analysis needs to be done.
Good.
Absence of employee recognition, employee, yeah, I can also do not see rewards and recognition, or the motivational part, what kind of motivational things are they doing across.
Good.
And then no succession planning, absence of team building efforts. So such kind of things are little lacking in this particular scenario, and yes, an OD intervention is very much required. If I go to this third
Wonderful.
question, how are you going to help Mr. Ram Singh if he calls you in an external OD consultant? So again, this question answer is what I would like to know. As per my opinion, it would be firstly, would be a diagnosis, and then, action research planning. It can be,
Yes.
sensitivity training can be done, T group
Right.
training can be done, then managerial grid can also be used. So such
Correct.
kind of it would be, I would not stick onto for, one intervention to deal with, but 4 or 5 interventions can work precisely. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah,
Certainly, you
that
have
is.
done it beautifully. Probably
Thank
better
you.
than I could. Even better than I could do. The
Yeah.
only addition I can make is one, which
Yeah.
is, for the benefit of those people who may not have read it fully also. You see,
Mm-hmm.
there is already some kind of a diagnosis done by
Yeah.
Mr. Sharma, those 5 points that are there.
Yes.
So maybe you take as an external OD consultant, since this work is already done. So this part can start be your initial kind of understanding, and
True.
then yes, you have to uh, create your own action plan and
Okay.
discuss with Ram Singh with your basic understanding, after at least meeting up with a few sample people at all levels.
Hmm.
So Mr. Sharma's intervention is a good starting point.
Hmm.
Then add to it your own interactions with a few people, because you being an external OD consultant would have much better techniques than Mr. Sharma could have extracted the, if I may use a strong word,
Hmm.
extracted the right information, or deduced the right information from this. So you could add on to that. Thereby you will your appreciative inquiry, as I said, as opposed to a diagnostic inquiry, will
Okay.
probably help by praising people. So you could propose to Mr. Ram Singh that if I go and ask them the problems, that's not the right way to go about. After all, if your company has progressed, it has progressed because people have done their bit. So we need to appreciate, and you also maybe in some cases come along with me, appreciate
Sure.
your person, and then they will also feel good, and then we can continue with it. So those kind of initial steps will help you to diagnose. Actually, at the end of the day, diagnosis is what you need to do, except that in an appreciative inquiry, you are doing it in a much more positive manner, and thereby eliciting more and more information than a pure diagnostics could have done, right?
Yeah.
Great. And appropriate title, that is the last question here.
Title I haven't thought of actually.
Okay, no issue. You can, others can
I
at least
can
help
work
with
on-
that. You've done a fantastic analysis, so the others could definitely chip in.
So
And before I forget, please remember next time we have to do the case that was meant for today.
yeah,
This
yeah,
was a
sure.
case meant,
Yeah,
so and
The healthcare
particularly
worker, yeah.
I would expect some others to volunteer, because
Yeah,
that's
sure,
then
sure.
it becomes okay. Any other questions on today's session?
It's perfectly fine as of now.
Great. So as usual, I'll send the detailed slides. I couldn't cover some, but today there was not much of the content and slides, so I probably covered most of it. But I'll send it to you, not an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
So do we call it a day?
Yep.
All the very best, all of
Thank
you
you.
Thank you.
joining in.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Right. Bye. Till
Bye.
next week. Right.